Good morning. My name is Chris Stride. I am a judge in Lake County. As they say, misery loves company, so I have 3 kids. One of them is a sophomore in high school, one of them is an 8th grader in week left, and I still have a little one, a 4th grader. A couple years ago, more than that now, about 3 years ago, there was an incident in Deerfield where parents had hosted a party with their children being present. And as a result of things that went on at that party, 3 young men lost their lives. I've been a judge for 6 years. I was an assistant state's attorney in Lake County for roughly 12 years. So I was a prosecutor the majority of my career. I also did criminal defense work and civil work as well. And about 2 whole years into my career as a judge, the chief judge calls me and tells me that I've been assigned this case from Deerfield, which was at the time a misdemeanor. Little did I know that that case would become sort of the poster child, if you will, for social hosting and parental responsibility, not just in Lake County, not just in Illinois, but literally across the country and into other countries as well, and I'll talk about that more later. Not much shocks me, I have to say, after 20 years in a criminal courtroom. I currently preside over a felony courtroom in Lake County. I'm also a presiding judge of a therapeutic intensive monitoring drug court, which deals with career criminals that are career criminals as a result of their alcohol or drug addiction. I like to say I think I've seen just about everything that there is to see in a criminal courtroom. This case shocked me, and one particular part of this case shocked me, and I'll talk about that more at the end. Since apparently they canceled all my children, that's your soap opera teaser. When this case happened in Illinois, it was a violation of what was called the Illinois Liquor Control Act. At the time that this happened, it was a misdemeanor for a parent to, or a host, to give alcohol to a child. That has changed literally as a result of this case, and it was legislation sponsored by our local state senator, Susan Garrett, actually sponsored the legislation that changed the law. It changed really at this part right here at the bottom. And what that part says is this, that if you're a parent or a social host and people drink in your house and you allow that to go on, and as a result of that, indirectly results in great bodily harm or death to any person, the person violating this subsection shall be guilty of a Class 4 felony. In Illinois, a Class 4 felony is punishable by 1 to 3 years. In the Illinois Department of Corrections, 3 to 6 years if you're eligible for an extended sentence, followed by a year of mandatory supervised release or parole. You could also be fined up to $25,000. You could be placed on probation or intensive probation for up to 30 months and spend up to 18 months of local incarceration in a periodic imprisonment or work release facility in Waukegan. When the case was tried, this was a Class A misdemeanor. It's a jailable offense, but excuse me, in the local county jail, not in the Department of Corrections. Excuse me. The reality is this. Because of the Hutzel case, law enforcement has become enormously aggressive, and rightfully so, to ferret out this kind of permissive behavior. It's extended also, really, these 2 sections, and this will be the only law school that you go to today. Really, the part that I wanted to talk about is this part down here, because we see a lot of this. We frankly see a lot of this important. We frankly see a lot of it this time of year at prom time. A person who rents a hotel or a motel room for kids or minors to use for the consumption of alcohol, you fall under the purview of this section. And again, if that consumption of alcohol results in great bodily harm, committed a felony. All right, who were Sarah and Jeff Hutzel? That was the name of the defendants. It's colloquially known as the Deerfield parents case. The Deerfield parents actually had names, and they were Jeff and Sarah Hutzel. And they were extraordinarily highly educated. Mr. Hutzel had an MBA from Harvard. He was a CFO for a major figurine company. He had a buyout from that company, opened his own furniture making business, and was doing enormously well. They were hugely active in the Deerfield community. They were active in any number of charitable organizations. They were active in their church, the parish that they were a member of. And they were really what I like to describe as our neighbors. I grew up in Lake Forest. I live in Lake Bluff. I pointed out to the kids, which freaks me out a little bit. I graduated from the school 33 years ago. So it's people that we know. We know the Hutzels. They live next door to us. They go to church with us. They might be on the Gordon board with us. They might be on the Women's Auxiliary at the hospital with us. We know them. They are all around us. What happened is this. Their son came home from his freshman year at University of Kansas for the Deerfield High School homecoming. The Hutzels lived in a home right near the high school, sort of down this long private drive. Beautiful home. It's a big, beautiful home. It was, as many homes are in these communities, a reflection of everything that Mr. Hutzel had been able to accomplish in his life. Their son brought friends over, and it's like every other teenage encounter. That group of friends started growing, and it became larger and larger and larger. The Hutzels had a unique entrance into the basement of their home. You could go into their 4-car garage. There was a stairwell that led directly into the basement. A number of kids were there. The testimony at the trial was such that Mr. Hutzel clearly was in the basement a number of different times when there was sort of open, notorious drinking going on. In the basement, there were beer pong games. Now, I had no idea that there was a game called beer pong. I really am fun, but I'm not that fun. They bounced ping pong balls into beer cups. That's beer pong. Going on all over. Mr. Hutzel's talking to this young man who's holding a red Solo cup full of beer about internet gambling. He's down in that basement 3 or 4 times. At the end of the day, a couple of the boys decided just drinking the beer wasn't enough. They wanted to get high. So they went up to this boy's car. 5 boys in total went to this little Volkswagen. I think it was a Jetta. And they sit in the car. One of the boys that was there in the car had just arrived at the party. He had a twin brother, a terrific athlete, very popular kid, a very accomplished kid at Deerfield High School. He sat behind the driver of the car. They decided to get high, and they did. And they decided to go zooming down this private drive that leads to the Hutzels' home. The driver loses control of the car. He hits a tree at the driveway. The car sort of nosedives down into the ground. Physics takes over. The car leans into the tree. The roof of the Jetta hits the tree and is sort of peeled back like a sardine can. The car kind of spins and comes to rest, literally, at the base of the parking area to the Hutzels' driveway. The boy sitting behind the driver, the one that had just gotten to the party, the one who decided to go for a car ride, is killed instantly. The driver's killed as well. This is the tree, this is the door that was ripped off the vehicle. That's the roof in the driver's side. And you'll see in this area sort of that tarp that's there for a reason. And that's the back seat. What that's covering is the young man that was sitting in the back of the car. That's another view of the extent of the damage to the car. Well, needless to say, 911 calls are made, Deerfield responds, paramedics respond, and they start an investigation. They go into the garage and they begin to find in the garbage cans a number of, beer cans and pop cans as well. Well, why is that important? Why does that matter? Well, why that's important is because the parents and the kids, post-accident, pre-police, start to clean up. And there was testimony at the trial that the kids and one of the parents was cleaning up. Bad idea. Nothing will get the ire of the police department up like you trying to hide what you were involved in. More of the same. They're the red solo cups that all the kids were drinking out of. Well, they start an investigation and they figure out what happened, and these parents who are highly successful, pillars of their community, active in just about every aspect of local life, end up having their mugshots taken at the Lake County Sheriff's Department. Here's your Harvard MBA dad now charged with a criminal offense. There's the mom that spent time in New Orleans after Katrina with youth groups with her church, who took kids to Mexico to engage in mission work with her church. I said the Hutzels are your neighbors, and I firmly believe that. I also would submit to you that the Hutzels were not bad people. I think they made unbelievably bad decisions, but I don't think they were bad people by a long shot. So we go to trial. And what did that look like? Well, let me describe how that looked to me, because I sit in kind of a unique position where I get to walk out and look at everybody in the courtroom like I'm looking at you this morning. The entire Chicago press corps was there. I mean, all the talking heads that you see on the nightly news were sitting in that courtroom. All the print journalists were there. The courtroom was filled with people supporting the Hutzels. The courtroom were there, frankly, with residents from Deerfield who were so horrified and disgusted that they wanted to watch what happened to these parents. The state actually called as a witness in that case the son who had the friends come over to testify against his parents. They had the right to do that, and they did it. So there's a Greek tragedy playing out in front of me, literally, as I'm watching the son testify against his mother and his father. Friends were called that were at that party to testify against the son, because they were impeaching the son with the testimony of the friends, because the son didn't testify consistently with what he had told the police. So now you have friends pitted against friends. You have friends versus Mr. and Mrs. Hutzel, kids that had grown up in that house, kids that had known the Hutzels their whole life, now being trotted in to testify against them. One of the more surreal things for me was having to talk to all these kids because the state gave them testimonial immunity. And what that means is this: anything that they admitted that they did that was illegal, drinking beer, smoking pot, the state agreed in exchange for their testimony they weren't going to turn around and charge them for engaging in that criminal behavior. So all these kids that the state trotted in to testify all had to go out and hire lawyers. They all brought their lawyers into my chambers, and I had to sit there and go over their immunity agreements with them. Here are literally anywhere from 16 to 20-year-old kids that are being put in this position, not because the state was being unreasonable, but this is what happened. The sentencing rolled up, and again, I walk out, and it was packed, and it was one of those situations where, as a trial judge, you're sort of darned if you do and darned if you don't. I understood, I think, what happened that night. I had a fairly clear picture of what had gone on. It was a misdemeanor. It wasn't a felony. All they could have been sentenced to was a year in jail. You're talking about people that not only didn't have any criminal history, but had lived really model lives in the community. I had to listen
and you'll hear more from Linda perhaps later about what it's like to read a victim impact statement. I had to listen to the parents and the families of the boys who lost their lives come into court and look to me as if there was something I could do that could change anything that happened. I wish there was. I wish sincerely I had that power, but I certainly didn't. Mr. Hutzel went to jail. Mrs. Hutzel was given a jail sentence, but it was stayed because the evidence didn't support her being in that house. As a friend of mine that's a judge with me, who's a wife and a mother, pointed out to me what probably happened, this is after the trial was all over, is that she said, you go down there and you figure out what's going on and you come back up here and you tell me. Well, that is probably what happened. But in doing that, she probably exposed herself to liability, certainly criminal liability. That's not it. It's not over for the Hutzels. It literally isn't over for the Hutzels because about a month ago, the appellate court reversed the trial court's decision dismissing part of the civil case against them, and they reinstated that civil case. They're still on trial for this, but they're on trial for this now civilly. You don't have to be charged in Illinois with a criminal offense to expose yourself to civil liability. The law is such, and largely because of this case, that even if you're not charged, if you knowingly violate the law in your home, almost every single insurance policy back then, and certainly every single insurance policy now, has an exclusion for your criminal conduct that does not extend coverage to you. You are on the hook personally for whatever damage is awarded by a judge or a jury. So what happened to the Hutzels? They left, and you can hardly blame them. Their reputations were destroyed. Their standing in the community was destroyed. They have become the bad parenting example, not just in Lake County, not just in Illinois, but in the community and the international community. And here's what I mean by that. I'm in Einstein's after the trial's over. I bump into a friend of mine, and he says, I read about your case. I'm like, oh, great. And he said, yeah, but you know where I read about it? And I said, no, where? And he said, I read about it in Scotland. I said, what were you reading, the International Herald Tribune? I figured they picked up an AP Wire story. No. A Scottish journalist was writing a story about a similar incident that happened in Scotland. So we're not alone. We're not alone in Illinois. Literally, this thing got press coverage all over the world. And I'm not saying that about me. I'm saying that about what these folks went through, what they had to go through. At the end of the day, I don't think the criminal case, I don't think the civil case is even the worst of what the Hutzels had to go through. They have got to wake up every morning with the knowledge that this happened on their watch. They've got to wake up every morning knowing and asking themselves this question, why? Why didn't I go in that basement? Why didn't I take all the keys away from those kids? Why didn't I stop my son from bringing these kids over before it even happened? Imagine what that's got to feel like. I mean, you can move, you can restart your life, you can restart your career, you can find a new church. At the end of the day, you are never going to change what happened, and the Hutzels were never going to change what happened at the end of their driveway that night. I said not much shocks me. In that case, something shocked me to my core. As I indicated, there was a number of kids that testified. Some of the kids that testified were the kids that survived that car accident. Those kids testified on a Thursday. We finished the trial, the proofs on a Friday, and then Saturday morning we did closing arguments, and we put the jury out. Saturday morning, the prosecutors walk in, and their mouths are hanging open. And they say, can we talk to you? And I said, sure. And they said, we just want to let you know that the boys that testified that were in that car were arrested last night for minor in possession and consumption of alcohol. So how do you do that? I remember just thinking to myself, you've got to be kidding me. How is that possible? Well, that's possible, and it's not, frankly, unusual. And you'll hear more from Lori, and you'll hear, I think, from Linda as well. Kids, they're fascinating creatures. And there's no more resourceful teenager in the world than the teenager that wants to find beer or alcohol or marijuana. They will do anything to find it. And when they drink and when they get high, they are affecting the very center of their brain that deals with judgment and reason. Was it any wonder that the horror that those kids went through, the fact that they had to testify and relive that, might actually drive them to want to engage in that behavior again? I don't think it's really a shock. I mean, I think that's what you deal with when you're dealing with teenagers. That's the creature and that's the challenge to these communities in general and to us as parents that we have to deal with. It's that beer, it's that joint that makes them think they're invincible. And I think the challenge for us as parents and the challenge for us as a community is to help them realize that by making that one choice, you can start a series of events that you lose control of in a heartbeat. Thank you very much for being here. The fact that you're here means that you all want to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. I applaud you for that, not just as somebody who lives in this community, but somebody who has to deal with this tragedy almost on a weekly basis. It's my hope that I never see you again. But if I do bump into you, that I see you hopefully enjoying one of the many wonderful things that our kids will have opportunities to explore at the high school. And I look forward to taking any questions that you have later. Thanks very much.